Alright guys, so let's talk about CSS. I'm gonna present you a problem and then we'll see how to deal with that particular problem. So imagine that as part of my JavaScript component, I have a div with class name box, for instance, and then I got a message, hello. I got a second box called Codery, and I got a third box called What. So now on my CSS, let's add a bit of, styling to our application. So I'm gonna keep my JavaScript file on my left-hand side and my CSS file on my right-hand side. By the way, you know, guys, that you can easily do that. You can easily create a nice layout on VS Code by just snapping files. So, for instance, if I drag the tab name, you see, I can snap it either on the left or on the right of my screen. So then we can play with both the JavaScript and the CSS files side by side. So now on my CSS, I'm gonna refer to the box. So let's play with some styles. So for instance, I don't know, border 3 pixels, solid red, and then font size, I don't know, 24 pixels, and finally background color yellow, for instance. I don't know, some weird colors. So now my question is, how are these 3 messages gonna be displayed? Will they get displayed in one column? That means one after the other in different lines, or will they get displayed alongside in the same line? One on the left, one in the middle, and the last message on the right hand side. How's the look and feel gonna be?
By blocks.
By blocks.
Yeah. Yes. One.
Okay, so like 3 different paragraphs, 3 lines, correct? Hello, and then Codery, and then wall. All right. Let's see if our friend Maxim is right. So here you go. So Maxim is right. Let me show the screen a bit. You see, we got the messages displayed in 3 different lines. First hello, then Codery, and finally wall. That's the default way the HTML works. HTML is a block-based markup language. Yeah, whenever you drop a div, it will occupy all the space on that line. 2 divs, 2 lines, 3 divs, 3 lines. Of course, there are exceptions and ways to transform that, but that's at least the default scenario, the default use case scenario when talking about divs. But now my question is, what if because of whatever reason, I don't want to display these 3 elements on different rows? What if I want to get hello on the left hand side, Codery in the middle, and wall on the right hand side? Can anyone figure out how to do that? Using Flexbox. Yes, that's interesting. I like that. Yes, using Flexbox. Also Grid, but we'll talk about Grid on the next week probably. Yeah? So for now, let's focus on Flexbox. The idea behind Flexbox is to give you the ability to easily transform the direction of your content. Historically speaking, that has been a huge challenge over decades in CSS. So in the 90s, we got something called tables. Not sure you remember tables, guys. So you can display something like a table, and then you have T-body. So that was a big pain in the ass, guys, because we were using tables just to display columns with banners and things like that. Yeah. So I mean, technically speaking, you can still do that. You'll never get a job, right, if you present your ability right in tables. So don't do that. Later in this century, we start talking about floating. So you may have heard of things like float left or float right. So playing with floating, we can somehow, you can see now I managed to somehow transform my layout, but that was also a pain in the ass because of multiple reasons that I'm not going to explain today. So thankfully, a few years ago, CSS introduced something called Flexbox, and with Flexbox we could, by the first time, create columns in an elegant fashion. So let me show you how it works. When talking about Flexbox, we have to play with two levels: the parent or the container and the children or the items. So your HTML should look something like that: div, class name, something. We'll talk about naming conventions in a minute, but first things first, that's your Flexbox structure. You see, you got a parent element surrounding your columns. See? And now it's time to provide a meaningful class name. If you search on Google, there are two ways of calling to this class name, even though you can call it Boris Johnson if you want. But I think out there the community prefers to refer to the parent element as container, or some resources, I think MDN prefers to call it wrapper. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, it's something that contains or wraps your content. Let me call it container. And now on the children level, all my boxes, I think the community likes to call it either element or item. Once again, guys, this is not rocket science. If I was building a list of movies, I will call it movie, movie, and movie. Yeah, so you can do whatever you want. I'm just trying to share some keywords so that will sound familiar to you once you discover them out there. So let me call them item. So I got a container with 3 items. Yeah, I think that's readable enough. And because I have renamed my box, obviously on my CSS, if I want to keep my styling, I need to rename the selector. What's the specificity associated to the item selector, guys? 10. Fantastic, fantastic. Cool, awesome. All right, so this is what we got so far. Unfortunately, visually speaking, we'll get nothing relevant. So you see still hello, Cody, and Wall in 3 different lines, as Maxim explained before. So now we can change that easily by doing the following. Look, I'm gonna choose the container, I can do it, container element on my CSS. And now look at the first CSS rule we can introduce: display flex. Yeah, that's the first thing. Look, just by typing display flex, look to what happened with my browser. Boom! You see, it's a massive change. I don't have 1 column with 3 rows. Now it's on the other way around. I have 1 row with three columns. Hello, Cody, and Wall. Yeah, just by adding a single line of CSS. Display flex. Let's have a look to DevTools. How DevTools can help understanding the way flex works. So I'm gonna drill down. I'm gonna navigate through my HTML structure until I select my container, and then once I got my container, at the bottom, you see container display flex. If I disable the rule, you see the big difference, the big impact this single line of CSS is adding to my HTML page. Yeah? So just by adding display flex. Questions so far? No? Vicky, I didn't get that. Can you repeat the question, please?
No, it's just, I think we will do it now. It's when I have something for the positioning.
No, but that positioning, yeah, that's a different story. So there are
like, let's say you have missing one column, and the other 2 is one after the other. So one has the space of the whole row.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So that will. Yeah. So that's the next thing, Vicky. So it's. Yeah, definitely. So essentially at the moment we got 3 columns, but in reality that looks a bit weird, right? Because, so we got one after the other in the same line, but what happened with this, remaining space on the right hand side of my screen? That's a bit silly, right? So what if I want to have 3 columns spanning 1/3 of the available width each of them. Yeah. So in other words, I want to fill all the width on my line. To do that, you need to add a second line of CSS. In other words, with 2 lines of CSS, you'll manage to change drastically your layout. The second line of CSS should be applied to the item. In other words, on the child level, not on the container, not on the parent, but on the child level. So what's the second line of CSS we need to write? We need to type flex 1. That's important. What that 1 means? That means it's, let me add a comment, a proper comment. Maybe somewhere else, let me add a comment. Each column equals item spans 1 fragment. Please guys, say that keyword fragment, because a fragment is a very important keyword when talking about CSS. So if each column, if each item spans 1 fragment, can you tell me how many fragments our container has? 3. That's correct. That's correct. Our container has 3 fragments. Each item will span 1 out of 3. In other words, now each item will occupy 1/3 of the available space on that particular row. You see? Now that looks a bit better. The screen size is not relevant. You see, guys, if I shrink my viewport, you'll see in a second, if I make my screen smaller, that's fine. The available space will be equally distributed across all my columns. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Cool. So then I got a question for you. What happened if instead of flex 1, I change that to flex 2? What will be the visual impact of this change?
The same because each item has the same number.
That's interesting. So can you tell me, guys, how many fragments our container has? 6. 6, guys. 6 fragments. Why 6? Because each child has 2 fragments. 2 plus 2 plus 2. However, even though now we got 6 fragments, in reality, will this change have any impact on the visual representation of my app? No. Exactly. Was that Lauren? So Lauren is right. Proportionally is the same. Before that change, we got 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. What we got now is 2, 6, 2, 6, 2, 6. So it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Again. You see? It's the same. So in other words, it doesn't matter, it doesn't really matter if you type flex 1, flex 2, or flex 1 million. It's not going to make any difference. It goes without saying that if you see that line of code, please run away, leave the company, leave everything. Yeah, because that's very weird. What's the point of doing flex 1 million? So even though that's a bit stupid, it is true that we could do some magic by playing with these numbers. Let me present you an example. Imagine that because of whatever reason, the second column, Caudery, needs to be more prominent. Yeah, we want to duplicate, as an example, the size of the Caudery column. We can do something. We can add another class name, like, I don't know, special, if you want. Yeah. So now, look at what we can do. We can do on the special column. Let me revert flex 1 million to flex 1. Can anyone tell me how can I make the special column twice as large as any other column?
Flex
Flex
row. Flex row.
Flex row, yes, flex row, or you got the shortcut, easier than flex row, if you just type flex2, yeah? So now let's analyze what we got. Can you tell me how many fragments the container has? 4, that's correct. One fragment on the item, plus 2 fragments on the special column, plus 1 fragment on the last column. 1 plus 2 plus 1 equals 4 fragments. So out of 4 fragments, what will be the width of the first one? Percent base. Two quarters? 1 quarter, that's correct, guys. 1 quarter, 25%. Yeah? Why 25%? Because the first column spans 1 fragment out of 4. Same for the last column, 1 out of 4. And then on the special column, we can see that it will span 2 quarters. That means 50%. So now, pop, you see? Now the Caudery column is as large as all the other columns combined. If I unselect that column on VS Code, on DevTools, you can see the impact of enabling or disabling that column. Questions? No? What happened if I change the special column to flex3? How many fragments my container has? 5. That's correct. And now the one in the middle will span 3/5 of the available space, which is 60%. So we are making that column just larger. Yeah, as you can see here. Yeah. And what happened if now we change flex2 on the items? How many fragments our container has? 7. That's correct. Will the Caudery column be bigger or smaller than it used to be before? Smaller, that's correct. Why smaller? Because in relative terms, before when we got that, the special column fit 60% of the space, 3/5. But now, because we are adding more fragments, that special column spans 3 out of 7 fragments. Yeah, we got 7 fragments. The special one spans 3 of them, which is less than 50%. So as you can see, it's still larger than the others, still larger, but not as large as it used to be. I mean, you can quickly prototype. Guys, if you press the arrow keys on your keyboard, up arrow and down arrow, you can quickly play with different values to see how it will look like. And now, what happened if I change on the special column, not 2, not 3, not 4, on the other way around, 0? Can anyone predict the outcome of the change? Is the what? Sorry?
Will it disappear?
Disappear. That was a bit aggressive. No, it won't disappear. However, the idea wasn't crazy, because if increasing the number just makes that column larger, decreasing the number will just make the column smaller. Yeah, I think that sounds quite natural to me. However, when the number is 0, it's not removing the element. However, it's just now that special column is just occupying the minimum space it requires to be displayed. Look, just as wide as the content of the box is. Yeah. If you got Codery, it will be as wide as the word Codery. If we got Codery with exclamation marks, it will be Codery with exclamation marks. If we got just K, it will be, as you will see in a second, just K. Yeah. So flex 0 means make that column as small as possible. Any questions? No? Guys, that's pretty much it about Flex. You can see, obviously, I mean, Flex is a huge wall. Flex is a huge wall. I would like to share some resources. I would like to share a blog post with you afterwards from CSS Tricks, where you will find all the details about using Flex. Before presenting you that, let me present you a problem. Let me get rid of that rule. By the way, what happens if I move the special rule to the top? Will the Codery column be as small, as short as the text is? Or in other words, how many fragments the Codery column will have? 2 or 0?
2.
Why 2?
Because I didn't move the right special.
Correct. What's the specificity of a special? 10. What was the specificity of item? 10. Who wins? Why? It's the last one. Fantastic, guys. You all got the job, right? So yes, you are right. If I refresh, you see that now Codery. In other words, that rule is, is invalidated. And what happens if I put? Can I do that, guys? Will that rule apply? Why not? That was a trick. Yeah. So look at the space. Can anyone tell me what that space implies? Exactly. So we are ruining it because of the space. The space means, hey, find an item. Do we have any item? Yes, we got 3 items so far. Fantastic. But wait a minute. Before doing anything else, please find another element with a class name special inside of the item, which is not the case. It's not the case. So can anyone tell me how to make that rule effective? What do I have to change? Remove the space. Brilliant. What happens if I remove the space? Will that rule apply? What's the exactly? So what's the specificity associated to this selector, line number 9? 20. That's correct. Brilliant, guys. Brilliant. You see? So now my rule applies regardless of whether that selector happens before or after the conflicting one. So now let me present you the final problem of this session. Imagine that you're building an app. Actually, let me simplify the problem a bit. I don't care about the special columns. I just want to have 3 columns, all of them with the same dimensions, same width, blah, blah, blah. So let me just get rid of the unnecessary stuff. You good? You see now we got 3 columns. And now my question is, what if I'm okay with that. However, on mobile, I want to change the layout. Imagine that you are building a quiz game where you get a question and you need to select the right answer. In which year Megasar versus Crocosaurus was filmed? 1991, 1992, whatever, yeah? And you need to pick the right answer. And this is okay for desktop because, you got your cursor, so you can effectively click on the appropriate box. However, if you go mobile, that may not be enough because I got a very big thumb. So by accident, I may select the wrong option. So in other words, long story short, I want to change the layout for mobile. On mobile, I want to display one element after the other. So hello, first row, Codery, second row, and world, third row. So can anyone give me some advice about how to do that? A media query. That's correct, guys. A media query is a CSS rule that only applies under some special circumstances. So the way you can write a media query is by typing media, and now you can specify your rule. So for instance, my rule will be max width 600 pixels. So whatever I do here will only apply if the width of the screen of the user is up to 600 pixels. So now, for instance, I can change the container. So can anyone tell me how can I change the direction of my boxes? Also you, that's interesting. Exclamation, why? Yes, so I will accept two solutions. One of them is better than the other, however. So first of all, you say display block. Display block. So let's see what happened. If I refresh, hey guys, you're right. You see? Look. Desktop. And if I shrink the browser, oh, what the hell I'm doing? If I manage to shrink my browser, I need to shrink it a lot. You see, eventually, you see, it moves from desktop to mobile. It's actually easier just to toggle the emulator. You see, mobile, desktop, mobile, desktop. Yeah, so that's okay. However, to me personally, that's not my favorite approach. Changing the way you display an element feels a bit aggressive. Let me show you a better alternative, even though that won't make any impact visually speaking. Yeah, so that's okay, guys, that's okay. However, I prefer to do something different. I prefer to use something called flex direction. Yeah, correct. You didn't get that. Sorry, Maxime, I didn't get that. So yes, flex direction column. So flex direction column, this is essentially telling the browser in which direction the elements should be displayed. You see? So this is desktop and this is mobile. Mobile and desktop. On desktop, we didn't specify any flex direction. I've seen people typing flex direction row, which is correct. But to me, that feels a bit odd because flex direction row, that's the default. Yeah. So if you don't specify any flex direction, the default will be row. Yeah. You can do it. You can leave it. That's fine. It just feels a bit unnecessary to me. Any questions, guys? Yeah, the height of the yeah, that's a good point. However, I got bad news for you, Elena, because I'm not gonna answer the question right now. So what I would like to do, I would like to invite you to play because you get that answer sort of on the Codery platform. So guys, if you go, oh, there's a React challenge running. That's interesting. So if you go, guys, to the platform, if you select HTML and CSS on the intermediate level, regardless whether it's lower, mid, or upper, here you'll find some sexy exercises about Flexbox. Actually, there are two modules, the first one and the second one. So obviously, please start with the most simplistic ones. You see, the first question, that's pretty much what we've been doing today. You see, 3 boxes, blah, blah, blah. Then we play with heights, and then we play with media queries as well. So that's pretty much what we've been doing today. Apart from that, there is the second module, Flex 2. In here, you get a bit more complicated questions. So for instance, Elena, question number 1, we start playing with the whole available height of the screen. So that question could be beneficial. Of course, we talk about alignment, how to move boxes to the left, to the middle, blah, 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 blah. You know, guys, I'll tell you something. Flex is a complex world. is a complex word. There are so many things, so many details, but at least I wanted today to present you the fundamentals, the basics about Flex. If you want to get a better understanding about Flex, let me recommend you something. Let me search CSS Tricks Flexbox. I'm sharing this link with you right now on Slack, because to me, this article is the Bible of Flexbox. In here, you will find all the resources about how to align, how to distribute, how to blah blah blah. It's a really, really, really long yet interesting article. Look, I love it because of multiple reasons. First of all, you see, there are two columns. So first of all, the column on the left talks about rules, properties, strategies that apply to the container. This is what we've been talking about, right? The container. On the right column, you got the same thing with properties and rules and everything that apply on the children, on the items. And one of the interesting things about this article is how visual it is. You cannot see any pictures. Here you go. It took a while, but you see? So the pictures give you a visual representation about how the boxes will look like on the screen depending on what do you do. Yeah? So this article, I'm not asking you to read it end to end, because it's a very intense article, but keep it somewhere, because it's just a matter of time that you will need it. Anything else, guys?
Is the only
Readability is a good reason, definitely. If you play with some advanced Flex rules, at some point you may have some rules. I'm just making this up, like Flex Aaron equal 12. This doesn't make any sense, right? But it's just an example. I'm using a more advanced rule about Flex, and the thing is, I want to keep that rule regardless of whether I'm navigating my app on mobile or desktop. I want to keep it all the time. If I'm using Flex direction, I'm just changing the direction of my boxes. However, all the CSS rules applied regarding Flex will still be valid, apart from the Flex direction. All the others will be still valid. If, however, I do display block, the thing is, I'm killing Flex. I'm not using Flex anymore. So any advanced stuff about Flex will be gone. Anything? Yeah, exactly. Anything else, guys? Yep. Yes. No, wait. So Bootstrap, that's a completely different story. So Bootstrap is a UI library to simplify the process of creating user interfaces. So in other words, with Bootstrap, you don't do these things by yourself. You don't do display Flex, no. So you add a class name somewhere, like is layout. I just made that up, so don't follow this strictly. Yeah, but you add a class name, which is a convention in Bootstrap. So whenever you add that class name, Bootstrap is automatically creating a Flex layout for you. Yeah, I have nothing against Bootstrap. However, I'll have to tell you, at a personal level, I've never been a big fan of it. And the reason is, if you delegate the responsibility of building the layouts into Bootstrap, you're losing control somehow. You're losing control. You don't really understand what's going on. Yeah. So I don't think CSS is that complicated. So I will personally invite you to make the effort of practicing with CSS rather than using an external utility like Bootstrap. Even though I admit the advantages of using it, I wouldn't personally recommend it to you right now. Well, we will So to talk about the differences, we have to explain first what grid is and how grid works, which I'm not gonna do today. So we'll run a new workshop where we'll build pretty much the same stuff, and we'll build it using grid. At that time, we will spot the differences and of course the similarities, and we'll explain when to use one and when to use the other. Long story short, I don't think either Flex is gonna replace grid or vice versa. I think depending on what do you want to build, you are more likely to use one or the other, and we'll obviously talk about that shortly. Exactly. You have to choose between the two, and probably it doesn't matter what you're trying to build, you'll be able to find the solution. It's like, should we ride a motorbike or should we drive a car? So probably, in the majority of the occasions, both type of vehicles will satisfy the requirement, which is moving you from point A to point B. But obviously, depending on many details, you may want to drive a car or ride a bike. Yeah? So that's pretty much the same example. Actually, that's probably not a really good example, because I think the differences between a bike and a car are quite intense. Yeah? Huge. That would be the difference between driving, I don't know, a small car and a mid-sized car, if you want. I don't know. That was probably a stupid example. But yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that on the next week. Guys, thank you, Maxim. I got the last question for you. Have you ever heard about something called mobile first development? All right. Can anyone give me an accurate description about mobile first development means? Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Maxim. You have your main focus on mobile. That's your main focus, that's your target. And then, once mobile is okay, you introduce the necessary changes for desktop. This is what we call mobile first development. There are many famous examples of mobile first development application. So for instance, a good one is Instagram. Do you have Instagram? Yes, we have Instagram. So Instagram is a good example of mobile first development. Why? Because, you can, guys, once you got some experience, you'll be able to identify mobile first application. So if you check Instagram on your mobile phone, it looks nice, it looks sweet, it looks perfect. However, when you check Instagram on your laptop, it looks a bit dodgy, weird, obscure. Yeah. Of course, they've done some efforts. I'm sure they've spent some millions adapting Instagram to desktop. However, it's just not the same. Yeah. So, are we using mobile first guidelines in this session? Looking at that code, you should be able, even if you haven't attended the workshop, just looking at that code on the right hand side, you should be able to tell me, is that code mobile first? Look, awesome. Vicky got the jackpot. Guys, this is not mobile first. This is not mobile first. Yeah. But the thing is, so Maxim, this is not about opinions, it's about facts. And according to these facts, guys, look, this is desktop and this is mobile. Why? Because we had a rule to specially change mobile. In other words, mobile didn't come first. Mobile came later on. That's why this is not mobile first development. So with mobile first development, as Vicky suggested, it will work on the other way around. With mobile first development, we will do flex direction column, because that's my default, that's mobile. So then it will look perfect on mobile. Then once you're happy with mobile, you will check on desktop, and on desktop it will be wrong, because on desktop we want to keep 3 columns. But then, and just then, we will create a media query, media min width, as Vicky suggested, with 600 pixels. And then, can anyone complete this line, guys? Line number 20? Correct, Elena. Flex direction, row. Yeah. This is mobile first development, because now, not yet. Let me try to refresh the page. Sometimes this is a bit slow, guys. So let me try to refresh my page. So as you can see, now it works fine on desktop as well. Yeah, but our first focus was on mobile. This is mobile first development. Anything else? No? Cool, fantastic. I'm gonna share this snippet on the Slack in case you wanna play a bit afterwards. Yeah, apart from that, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you need anything. Cheers.